So the joys of life. Family. Daughter in the back there. Friends, wonderful friends. The beautiful landscape of the Central Coast, the fresh air, the sunlight, pavlova, and storytelling. For me, storytelling is one of the great joys of my life. And I was reminded this week of a poem by Khalil Gibran, who writes about joy and sorrow. And he says that joy and sorrow are like the two faces of one coin. You can't have joy without sorrow, and you can't have sorrow without joy. And your greatest joy is what gives you your greatest sorrow, and your greatest sorrow gives you your greatest joy. And that you have to be gouged out by sorrow and pain to make room for more joy. And I've definitely been gouged out by storytelling. Standing up here and telling a story when you're starting out, it's like standing naked in front of an audience with just a microphone stand to cover up your vulnerable bits. And most storytellers, when they start, they will say that the adult audiences are the scariest. But I don't think that's right. I think it's the children. You see, adult audiences, like your good selves, you're very polite. And you know that I think one of the reasons is that 75% of adults, they say, are terrified of public speaking, that they'd rather be dead than give the eulogy. So I figure that in adult audiences, 75% of you are thinking, oh, just thank God it's not me. And you'll applaud anybody with the gumption that stands up on the stage and gives it a go. No, it's the children that are the scary ones, because they're really honest. If you're not doing well, they'll tell you, or they'll just get up en masse and leave. Or they'll just take over the story and start doing it better. And I've had all those things happen. And before my very, very first storytelling for children, in that week, I lost 4 kilos of weight. And my daughter said that I looked like I was going to an execution, not to a performance. Anyway, I got there and my stomach was just doing star jumps, but I sat there and it went really well. The kids were joining in and they were making the noises like you guys did, and they were doing the sound effects and the actions. And I thought, this is fabulous, it's really going well. And then I got them yelling out in one particular story, stop! Don't cut down that tree! Do you want to try it? Stop! Don't cut down that tree! I had them revved up, they were screaming it. I thought, this is brilliant. And then at the end, the Montessori's teacher said, we don't raise our voices in Montessori. I wasn't asked back. And then I tried telling stories at one of the local clubs, adult clubs. And on Friday nights they have a kids club. And it's a huge, huge auditorium and there's 20 or 30 kids bouncing off the walls. Sugar drinks and lollies and ice creams galore. And parents are sort of nonchalantly sitting around the edge, mostly unsupervised. Anyway, I got there and I thought, I can do this, I can do this, I can create magic in this space. I started, once upon a time, 64 to the bistro, 64 to the bistro, please. Okay, I'll try again. Once upon a time, there was a castle. The courtesy bus is leaving in 5 minutes, courtesy bus in 5 minutes. Once upon a time, there was a castle with a beautiful princess. Meat raffle, get your meat raffle tickets, get your meat raffle tickets now. And it went on. And then to add insult to injury, I was here, the children were there. Then these 2 guys started coming in between us and stacking chairs and tables right in front of me where I was with the children trying to create magic. But I didn't give up. even though it gouged me and I went out of the car park, I thought, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I went back again and again, and it was okay sometimes, but I needed to do something a little bit more vigorous, I thought. And so I thought, I'm going to take the kids on this storytelling adventure around that massive auditorium. I'm going to create magic with these sugar-hyped, overtired children. I'm going to create magic. So it started well. I'd assigned them all roles in the story, and we started going on the walk around the massive auditorium. When little Poppy, God bless her, beautiful, angelic little thing, she decided she didn't want to be a rabbit. And she turned into a banshee. And she began to scream and chase the other children like she wanted to murder them. And these little boys, they shot over to the other side of the room. They opened the emergency exit and set off all the alarms. I didn't go back there either. After a few years, I ended up in England, and I went to the International School of Storytelling. And I learned a lot over there. They taught me to calm down a little bit. And they tried to tell me that silence in stories was good, and that less is more. When I told my first kid's story when I was over there, I'm like, and they were like, oh. Oh, these are all Steiner trained people, so they were all very, okay. So what they had me do, they gave me a 40-minute fairy tale to tell. And to practice, I had to sit on a chair with my hands under my bottom, and I was allowed to use minimal facial expressions, no character voices, and just tell the story. Well, the first 2 times I did it, it was such a strain. I gave myself a migraine each time. And eventually I got to the school where I was to do it, and I did it quietly, without my usual and magic happened. I got out of the way of the story, and somehow in that space, with the audience, the children and I, we created magic. And it was beautiful. And my storytelling teacher also decided to give me this other story, an Egyptian myth about Osiris and Isis. And Osiris, the god, he gets chopped up into bits by his brothers, and the bits scattered to the winds. And Isis has to put him together again. And when she does, there's one piece missing. Yes, his penis. And they said, okay, Lindy, we want you to do this story for 6th grade in an Anglican school. And so I found a version that didn't have the piercing penis, and I practiced that. And they said, no, not that version, the one with the penis. And I had to practice and practice doing it with a straight face. So I got to the school, the teacher's sitting in the corner, she's just busy marking things as I'm not looking at me, and I'm telling the story, it's going beautifully, they're listening so well. And I get to the point where Isis is putting the bits back together, and she realises there's a piece missing. His penis. And I just looked at the audience. Their little eyes opened wide. And they all looked at me, then they looked at each other. The teacher's head popped up. She looked at me, she looked at the children, they're all looking at me, their eyes wide. I continued. And the great god said, because Osiris is missing his. And they all took a deep breath and leaned in. His wand of life. And that's when they lost it. And they laughed and they laughed and they laughed. It took a while before I could finish the story. But later that week I was in the local supermarket, and I saw some girls up the end of the aisle, and they were elbowing each other, and I heard them say, "It's the penis lady." And that was a really joyful moment. So I've had kids do all sorts of crazy things. I just did a Norse mythology recently where I sing a bit of Queen song in it for some reason, and a little 9-year-old boy whose birthday party it was, he stood up and said, "You can't sing that, that's got copyright." And I had to explain to him, no, it's a parody, I'm all right, I'm covered. And he argued with me in the middle of the story. You know, and things like that happened all the time. And last year I was very, very fortunate to be invited to an international storytelling festival in India. And I lost a lot of weight in India. I usually do before a performance, but this was exasperated by anxiety, nerves, and curry. And we told at a lot of schools, we told to thousands of children, but on the big night, the showcase, we were in the beautiful, grand Conservatorium of Music. And it wasn't just children in the audience, it was about 200 adults, about 50 children. And all day I'm thinking, I have to tell a grand story, I have to tell a story with gravitas, it has to be important, I have to be serious. And I practiced all day this one story. I thought, yes, it's going to be the white whale, it's going to be good, it's going to be grand, you know, impressive. And I was going to tell it, they announced my name, I walk onto the stage, and little fairy Fifi comes out of my mouth. Little fairy Fifi, she's a little fairy that lives over at the Forest of Tranquility. And so, I hadn't planned it, but this story just leapt out of my mouth and I told it to 250 Indian people. And at the end of the story, everybody in the whole auditorium, all beautifully dressed in their saris, they're all flapping their wings up and down, singing, little fairy Fifi flying through the forest, flicking little flies with a fairy wand, a little fairy. It was the most magical, joyful moment. You know, I'm back again, and there are still days where I get so anxious, terrified, and days where I tank, where I want the stage to open up and swallow me. And I've told stories to auditoriums full of people, and I've told stories to one. And sometimes there's been none. So storytelling keeps me humble. And those days where I can sit in the car and I can bang my head on the steering wheel thinking, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I doing this to myself? Why am I doing this to myself? Then I think of those joyful moments. I think of those faces of the children and of the older people's inner child that look back at me. And sometimes their mouths just drop open and their eyes open wide. And often they'll come up and ask at the end of the show, is that story real? And there was one little girl that came one day and she said, thank you for bringing us magic.
Thank you so much, Lindy.